Reference to ancient Indian flying vehicles comes from ancient Indian sources. Many are the well-known ancient Indian epics, and there are literally hundreds of them. Most of them have not even been translated into English yet from the old Sanskrit. Few years ago, the Chinese discovered some Sanskrit documents in Lhasa, Tibet, and sent them to the University of Chandrigarh to be translated. Dr. Ruth Reyna of the university said recently that the documents contain directions for building interstellar spaceships. The Ramayana describes a Vimana as a double-deck, cylindrical aircraft with portholes and a dome. It flew with the speed of the wind and gave forth a humming noise. Ancient Indian texts on Vimanas are so numerous. The ancient Indians wrote entire flight manuals on the control of various types of Vimanas. Ancient manuscript Vimanas, the secret of constructing aeroplanes, describes Vimanas which will not break, cannot be cut, will not catch fire, and cannot be destroyed. Also the secret of making planes motionless, making planes invisible. Hearing conversations and other sounds in enemy planes. The secret of receiving photographs of the interior of enemy planes. The secret of ascertaining the direction of enemy planes' approach. The secret of making persons in enemy planes lose consciousness. The secret of destroying enemy planes. The pilot is one who knows the secrets. Bodhanada, scientists say that there are 32 secrets of the working of the Vimana. A pilot should acquaint himself thoroughly with them before he can be deemed competent to handle the aeroplane. He must know the structure of the aeroplane, know the means of its take-off and ascent to the sky, know how to drive it and how to halt it when necessary, how to maneuver it and make it perform spectacular feats in the sky without crashing. Those secrets are given in Rahasya Lahari and other works by Lala and other masters, are described thus. The pilot should have had training in Mantrika and Tantrika, Kritaka and Antaralaka, Gudha or hidden, Drishya and Adrishya or seen and unseen, Pariksha and Apariksha, contraction and expansion, changing shape, look frightening, look pleasing, become luminous or enveloped in darkness, deluge or pralaya, vimaka, tara, stun by thunderstorm din, jump, move zigzag like serpent, chapala, face all sides, hear distant sounds, take pictures, no enemy maneuver, no direction of enemy approach. Stab daka or paralyze, and karshana or exercise magnetic pull. The great Indian scientists/king who were supposed to catalogue the many sciences. Ashoka kept their work secret because he was afraid that the advanced science catalogued by these men, culled from ancient Indian sources, would be used for the evil purpose of war, which Ashoka was strongly against, having been converted to Buddhism after defeating a rival army in a bloody battle. The 9 unknown men wrote a total of 9 books, presumably one each. Book number was The Secrets of Gravitation. This book, known to historians, but not actually seen by them, dealt chiefly with gravity control. It is presumably still around somewhere, kept in a secret library in India, Tibet, or elsewhere, perhaps even in North America somewhere. One can certainly understand Ashoka's reasoning for wanting to keep such knowledge a secret, assuming it exists. Ashoka was also aware of devastating wars using such advanced vehicles and other futuristic weapons that had destroyed the ancient Indian Rama Empire several thousand years before. Dr. Reyna said that on board these machines, which were called astras by the text, the ancient Indians could have sent a detachment of men onto any planet, according to the document, which is thought to be thousands of years old. The manuscripts were also said to reveal the secret of Antima, the cap of invisibility, and Garima, how to become as heavy as a mountain of lead. Naturally, Indian scientists did not take the texts very seriously, but then became more positive about the value of them when the Chinese announced that they were including certain parts of the data for study in their space program. This was one of the first instances of a government admitting to be researching anti-gravity. The manuscripts did not say definitely that interplanetary travel was ever made, but did mention, of all things, a planned trip to the moon, though it is not clear whether this trip was actually carried out. However, one of the great Indian epics, the Ramayana, does have a highly detailed story in it of a trip to the moon in a Vimana, or Astra, and in fact details a battle on the moon with an Asvan, or Atlantean, airship. This is but a small bit of recent evidence of anti-gravity and aerospace technology used by Indians. To really understand the technology, we must go much further back in time. The so-called Rama Empire of northern India and Pakistan developed at least 15,000 years ago on the Indian subcontinent and was a nation of many large, sophisticated cities, many of which are still to be found in the deserts of Pakistan, northern, and western India. Rama existed, apparently, parallel to the Atlantean civilization in the mid-Atlantic Ocean, and was ruled by enlightened priest kings who governed the cities. The 7 greatest capital cities of Rama were known in classical Hindu texts as the 7 Rishi cities. According to ancient Indian texts, the people had flying machines which were called Vimanas. There seems to be no doubt that Vimanas were powered by some sort of anti-gravity. Vimanas took off vertically, and were capable of hovering in the sky, like a modern helicopter or dirigible. Bharadvaji the Wise refers to no less than 70 authorities and 10 experts of air travel in antiquity. These sources are now lost. Vimanas were kept in a Vimanagriha, a kind of hangar, and were sometimes said to be propelled by a yellowish-white liquid, and sometimes by some sort of mercury compound, though writers seem confused in this matter. It is most likely that the later writers on Vimanas wrote as observers and from earlier texts, and were understandably confused on the principle of their propulsion. The yellowish-white liquid sounds suspiciously like gasoline, and perhaps Vimanas had a number of different propulsion sources, including combustion engines and even pulse jet engines. It is interesting to note that the Nazis developed the first practical pulse jet engines for their V-8 rocket buzz bombs. Hitler and the Nazi staff were exceptionally interested in ancient India and Tibet and sent expeditions to both these places yearly, starting in the 30s, in order to gather esoteric evidence that they did so, and perhaps it was from these people that the Nazis gained some of their scientific information. According to the Dronaparva, part of the Mahabharata, and the Ramayana, one Vimana described was shaped like a sphere and borne along at great speed on a mighty wind generated by Mercury. It moved going up, down, backwards and forwards as the pilot desired. In another Indian source, the Samar, Vimanas were iron machines, well knit and smooth, with a charge of mercury that shot out of the back in the form of a roaring flame. Another work called the Samarangana Sutradhara describes how the vehicles were constructed. It is possible that mercury did have something to do with the propulsion, or more possibly, with the guidance system. Curiously, Soviet scientists have discovered what they call Ajalt instruments used in navigating cosmic vehicles in caves in Turkestan and the Gobi Desert. The devices are hemispherical objects of glass or porcelain, ending in a cone with a drop of mercury inside. It is evident that ancient Indians flew around in these vehicles, all over Asia, to Atlantis presumably, and even, apparently, to South America. Writing found at Mohenjo-daro in Pakistan, presumed to be one of the 7 Rishi cities of the Rama Empire, and still undeciphered, has also been found in one other place in the world, Easter Island. Writing on Easter Island, called Rongo writing, is also undeciphered, and is uncannily similar to the Mohenjo-daro script. Was Easter Island an air base for the Rama Empire's Vimana route? The Vedas, ancient Hindu poems, thought to be the oldest of all the Indian texts, describe Vimanas of various shapes and sizes, the Anayatra Vimana with 2 engines, the elephant Vimana with more engines, and other types named after the kingfisher, ibis, and other animals. Unfortunately, Vimanas, like most scientific discoveries, were ultimately used for war. Atlanteans used their flying machines, Velixi, a similar type of aircraft, to literally try and subjugate the world, it would seem, if Indian texts are to be believed. The Atlanteans, known as Asvins in the Indian writings, were apparently even more advanced technologically than the Indians, and certainly of a more warlike temperament. Although no ancient texts on Atlantean Velixi are known to exist, some information has come down through esoteric, occult sources which describe their flying machines. Similar, if not identical to Vimanas, Velixi were generally cigar-shaped and had the capability of maneuvering underwater as well as in the atmosphere or even outer space. Other vehicles, like Vimanas, were saucer-shaped, and could apparently also be submerged. According to Eklal Kushana, author of The Ultimate Frontier, in an article he wrote in 1966, Velyxi were first developed in Atlantis 20,000 years ago, and the most common ones are saucer-shaped of generally trapezoidal cross-section with 3 hemispherical engine pods on the underside. They use a mechanical anti-gravity device driven by engines developing approximately 80,000 horsepower. The Ramayana, Mahabharata and other texts speak of the hideous war that took place, some 10 or 12,000 years ago between Atlantis and Rama, using weapons of destruction that could not be imagined by readers until the second half of this century. The ancient Mahabharata, one of the sources on Vimanas, goes on to tell the awesome destructiveness of the war. The weapon was a single projectile charged with all the power of the universe. An incandescent column of smoke and flame as bright as the 1,000 suns rose in all its splendor. An iron thunderbolt, a gigantic messenger of death, which reduced to ashes the entire race of the Vrishnas and the Andhakas. The corpses were so burned as to be unrecognizable. The hair and nails fell out, pottery broke without apparent cause, and the birds turned white. After a few hours all foodstuffs were infected. To escape from this fire, the soldiers threw themselves in streams to wash themselves and their equipment. It would seem that the Mahabharata is describing an atomic war. References like this one are not isolated, but battles, using a fantastic array of weapons and aerial vehicles, are common in all the epic Indian books. One even describes a Vimana Velyx battle on the moon. The above section very accurately describes what an atomic explosion would look like and the effects of the radioactivity on the population. Jumping into water is the only respite. When the Rishi city of Mohenjo-daro was excavated by archaeologists in the last century, they found skeletons just lying in the streets, some of them holding hands, as if some great doom had suddenly overtaken them. These skeletons are among the most radioactive ever found, on a par with those found at Hiroshima and Nagasaki. Ancient cities whose brick and stone walls have literally been vitrified, that is fused together, can be found in India, Ireland, Scotland, France, Turkey, and other places. There is no logical explanation for the vitrification of stone forts and cities, except from an atomic blast. Furthermore, at Mohenjo-daro, a well-planned city laid on a grid, with a plumbing system superior to those used in Pakistan and India today, the streets were littered with black lumps of glass. These globs of glass were discovered to be clay pots that had melted under intense heat. With the cataclysmic sinking of Atlantis and the wiping out of Rama with atomic weapons, the world collapsed into a stone age of sorts, and modern history picks up a few thousand years later. Yet, it would seem that not all the Vimanas and Velyxi of Rama and Atlantis were gone. Built to last for thousands of years, many of them would still be in use, as evidenced by Ashoka's 9 Unknown Men and the Lhasa manuscript. That secret societies or brotherhoods of exceptional, enlightened human beings would have preserved these inventions and the knowledge of science, history, etc., does not seem surprising.